Hello, New Presbyterian Church. It's great to have Sunday school back, even though it's going to be virtually done for a while. I'll begin a series, and then Justin will be teaching, and we have some other surprises coming up in the next several weeks. The first series that we'll be doing is something that I had recorded many, many years ago for my full-time employer, which is Dr. D. James Kennedy Ministries, the television department, where I serve as senior producer. And in 2012, I produced a video series called Lord of All. And this was a video curriculum geared towards Sunday school classes and special Sunday nights or whatever, different times that you could show it at church. It's a 7-part series with lecture, yes, but then also with segments included, television segments, plus some commentaries from people. By the way, a lot of those commentaries were shot in this building 8 years ago, and it looks very different than it does today. I look very different in this series than I do today. I think this COVID-19 has put a few pounds on me, but as I always like to say, I'm in shape. Round is a shape. I hope you enjoy this series and realize that I have gotten a little bit older, hopefully a little bit wiser, but this series again is on Lord of All. It's based on a book I wrote with Dr. D. James Kennedy many years ago, showing how Jesus Christ is sovereign over every sphere of life. As he himself said, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples. So here now. Welcome back to our series. In this session, we'll be talking about what we called in the book, the sphere of the world. For one thing, we'll be exploring the issue of origins, that is, the issue of the creation. Then later, we'll discuss what it means to worship God alone, the issue of the Creator. In British Columbia, in Canada, 500 miles northeast of Vancouver, the Fraser River divides into two streams. One flows eastward to the Atlantic Ocean, and the other flows westward to the Pacific Ocean. The fork in the river is known as the Great Divide. Now imagine two droplets of water together. One goes to the east, the other goes to the west. 6 inches after the division takes place, the river's future course is unchangeably fixed. And though at one time these two droplets were together, eventually they end up thousands of miles apart. The question as to whether there is a creator God or not is just such a juncture in human thought. Someone might say, well, who cares about the view of origins? Isn't it just an academic debate? After all, we're here. Does it really matter how we got here? Let's begin by hearing from everyday people to see what they think about the creation-evolution debate.
Evolutionists, they think that we evolved from apes and that God didn't create us.
When you look at the vastness of the universe, the orderliness of the universe, you know that it didn't come by accident.
I was just so amazed at how beautiful the world is and how wonderfully thought out, and seeing the patterns.
I believe in the evolution of the world. I think Adam and Eve and Noah are metaphors, and as long as I stay with metaphor, religion and evolution are fine for me.
Stuff happened out of nowhere and then grew from there into something else, and then a monkey grew into a human. It took more faith to believe than God.
We've pushed out the concept of creation from the school system, and I think that's very dangerous and just flat out wrong.
I do believe in creation. I am not a person that's going to fight over whether it was 7 literal 24-hour, that whole kind of thing.
How do we know what method God used to create the earth?
I believe that all things were created by His speaking.
As far as the difference between, or the argument between creation and evolution, I personally don't see a reason why there can't be both.
Many people have bought into the notion that we're just the product of blind evolutionary processes. The idea that we have naturally arisen out of some concatenation of amino acids and some primordial slime, And then we've crawled and slithered up onto the banks of some muddy edge of some ancient pond. And from there, into the trees, and then back down again. We've shed our tails and most of our fur, and here we are, worshiping the living myth that we've created, called God. Is life just an accident? Or is there a creator? That issue has profound impact on everything. Without a creator God, then ultimately there's no purpose to life. To use a biblical phrase to describe the life philosophy of some unbelievers, let us eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. In the movie Adaptation, the character played by Nicolas Cage ponders the question of where he ultimately comes from.
Why am I here? How did I get here?
That's the story of evolution retold in a matter of seconds. Now, in contrast, the Bible says that God created human beings as a little lower than the angels. But evolution teaches that basically we're just a little higher than the apes. Ultimately, what matters is what is true. In a classic debate in the 19th century, when evolution was new, the creation side, represented by a Christian bishop, said that he wouldn't want to be viewed as coming from a monkey. But the pro-evolutionary debater, Thomas Huxley, said he wouldn't want to be viewed as suppressing the facts of science, regardless of how unflattering their conclusions may be. Well, Huxley won that particular debate, which was held at Oxford, England, and that debate helped evolution gain wider acceptance. We've been told since the days of Darwin, basically all the evidence of science favors evolution. So even if evolution demotes the value of man, Darwin's next book, by the way, was called The Descent of Man, it's true, right? So we just have to accept it. Well, let's meet a scientist who once believed in evolution and taught it dogmatically until he was challenged to defend it rigorously.
To the late Dr. Richard Lumsden, former professor of biology at Tulane University and Medical School, and the former dean of the graduate school, evolution was science, whereas creation was merely religion, and he taught as much to his students.
What I would try to get across is that science is science. Science deals with the real world, with real phenomena. We don't bring into such discussions inferences of supernatural.
Dr. Lumsden, who studied at Tulane, Harvard, and Rice, couldn't believe it when the Louisiana State Legislature passed a law that if evolution were taught in the public school classroom, then equal time had to be made for creation science.
My reaction to that was just total consternation. Who are these people telling us, PhD level scientists, how to teach and what to teach regarding science? So I just thought the whole thing was just absolutely absurd. But it was not the energy of a supernatural nature. I was prompted at that point to give a lecture on the origin of life, giving creation its due with as much mockery as I could summon. Truly, in the beginning was the Word, but the Word was hydrogen.
After that class, one of his graduate students came up to him and said,
"Great lecture, Doc." Well, that got my attention. Flattery always did. And she said, "But I have some questions." And indeed she did. She had a legal pad, and I could see line after line after line after line.
So they had an appointment, which ended up lasting longer than anticipated. The appointment also ended up changing Dr. Lumsden's life.
Aren't the odds of the random assembly of genes mathematically impossible?
You've had your share of mathematics. Let's see if we can't figure that out. Not only were we talking about a mathematical impossibility, we were talking about a physical and chemical impossibility, which gave me pause. Genes, that might be 10 to the 200th, 10 to the... Those are pretty formidable odds, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
But the fact remains is that we're here. And in reality, the only way we could have gotten here is through the evolutionary process. So the fact that we're here really proves evolution, doesn't it? What I was saying wasn't making very good scientific sense. The whole time I'm answering, I'm trying not to betray this to the students. What I'm telling this young lady and what I told the students this morning is not good science. So far, I guess we just haven't been lucky enough to pick up the critical evidence. It dawned on me right then and there that evolution was bankrupt as a scientific theory. Well, if that were so, if life did not originate by a naturalistic, materialistic, spontaneous process, what was the alternative explanation? Oh my God. And I said it then, not in blasphemy, but in awe. What happened that afternoon was, first of all, a mortal embarrassment to me as a professor. Professing to be wise, the professor was made a fool. And then secondly, with the realization that, hey, God exists and God created, was that experience of fear. Now that's enough to turn a corner in anyone's life.
After much study and soul-searching, Dr. Lumsden became a creationist first, and then a Christian.
The evidence of science, the best in paleontology, the best in biochemistry, the best in genetics, and so on, is all compelling for creation. Creation theory does not rest on some purely metaphysical principles. It rests on the same science that evolution theory would rest on, except that the better explanation is creation, not naturalistic, materialistic, stochastic, or random evolutionary process.
What a powerful example of the grace of God to change someone willing to accept the truth. Now, how are we to understand claims of supposedly overwhelming scientific facts backing up the theory of evolution? Well, there are minor biological changes in nature. Some people call this microevolution, if you will, which simply refers to a limited range variation within a species or kind. In Genesis, God said, "Let the earth bring forth living creatures after their kind." That's why some dogs are poodles and some dogs are Great Danes, while both still remain dogs. And it's how a virus can develop a resistance to treatments while still remaining the same virus. Critics note that Darwinists have tried to make a word game by using undisputed microevolution, if you want to call it that, which can be observed everywhere, and then claim it as proof of macroevolution, the theory that one species can change into another and that all life evolved ultimately from a common ancestor. Unfortunately for them, there's no evidence of macroevolution in the fossil record, as an example. All the fossils show fully formed creatures at many different strata with no links to the next form, nothing in transition from one type of creature to another. In other words, the missing links are still missing. In fact, even the late Dr. Stephen Jay Gould of Harvard, a leading evolutionist in his day, once admitted
that Darwinian evolution, gradual change in species over eons of time, was nowhere to be found in the fossil record, much to the consternation of his colleagues. He said, quote, "The fossil record doesn't show gradual change, and every paleontologist has known that ever since Cuvier," end quote.
Georges Cuvier was a French naturalist who died in 1832. So, did Gould then reject evolution? No. He postulated the theory that evolution simply occurred so quickly it could never be seen in the fossil record. So essentially, macroevolution is a grand extrapolation based on the assumption that microevolution, if we call it that, goes beyond the limits of kinds. Dr. Jonathan Wells, author of the groundbreaking book, Icons of Evolution.
The evidence for microevolution is abundant. We see minor changes within species everywhere we look. The evidence for macroevolution is missing. The interesting thing here is that before Darwin, microevolution wasn't called evolution at all. It's just minor changes within existing species. Darwin didn't call his book How Existing Species Change Over Time. He called his book The Origin of Species. And for that, there's just about no good evidence at all.
Amazingly, many people today have the suspicion that Christianity is at war with science, but the reality is that science could and did grow in only one milieu, Christianity. But going beyond the issue of the creation, let's explore for a moment the Creator. What does it mean that God alone is the Lord? In the first of the 10 Commandments, the Lord declares, "I am the Lord your God. You shall have no other gods before me." What does it mean that God is God? What is forbidden in that first commandment is simply idolatry. And what is idolatry? It means the service or worship of something other than the one true God. Idolatry can include worshiping the true God even through an idol. The idea that we can control the spiritual world by rites and rituals has always been intriguing to humans. The Bible calls us to live for Christ and not live for ourselves. It's by focusing on Jesus that we can overcome idolatry. Because by letting Jesus be Lord and in charge of our lives, we give up the right to willful rebellion. Idolatry says, "My will be done." True Christianity says, "Thy will be done." Dr. Kennedy said that there are more denunciations of idolatry than virtually any other sin in the Bible. Furthermore, this sin runs deep in the human psyche. John Calvin once said that the human heart is an idol factory. The first commandment, "I am the Lord your God, you shall have no other gods before me," is obviously of great importance because it's the only commandment where God says that those who disobey it hate me. God requires supreme rule in our lives. What are some modern idols? Advancement, success, bigger cars. Watch a lot of guys out there and it wouldn't be hard to conclude that their God has 4 wheels. What is your God? Or who is your God? God says we are to have no other gods before Him. We ask everyday people about God, gods, and idols.
Jesus is my God because He died on the cross and He paid for my sins and He created us.
Who is my God? It depends on what day it is.
My God is the God of the Bible, Jesus, Father, Son, Holy Spirit.
I've slipped back and forth. Some days I am very Christian. Some days I am full of doubt.
My God is the supreme being, the supreme mind, which created us human beings.
When I think of the higher power, I think of the universe as a whole, which in my eyes, somebody could say God and I say the universe, and we're really saying the same thing.
My God is Jesus Christ. Is there idolatry today? I think there's a lot of idolatry today. I know for me personally, I have to be careful that I don't put the TV in front of God. I don't put the gym in front of God.
Worshiping idols is having an interest or a passion for something other than God. For instance, if you are a lover of money, that would be an idol in your life.
But it is not wealth that is the problem, it's the worship of wealth which is the problem.
There's a lot of celebrity worship, especially in this country, I think, which is weird.
I think certainly in our society, I see a growing trend currently of government as God. You know, I want the government to take care of me. I want to know that if something goes wrong in my life, I have someone to turn to, and that is a false idol.
The main idol is self, but it manifests itself in different ways, such as it could be money, it could be politics, it could be even religious activities.
Why does God hate idolatry? Because it's a distortion of who He really is. Just as you've probably seen a photo of yourself that's very distorted, so God is not amused when infinitely worse distortions of His glory are made by people supposing that they're drawing a picture of God. Did you know that even the use of drugs can be a form of idolatry? People have used mind-altering drugs for centuries to manipulate spiritual forces. Today, many people in the previous and current generations have used recreational drugs, many of them with little understanding of the spiritual powers that they're coming in contact with. Drugs can be a gateway to the occult. In fact, sometimes we find the word sorcery in our New Testament as something condemned. And the Greek word there is pharmakeia, as in pharmacy, as in drugs. Now, of course, there's a huge difference between drugs for medicinal purposes, although that too can be abused, and recreational drugs. Whether it is the idols of the pagans or the modern idols of America, they are always infinitely less than God as He truly is. We don't make our idols today out of wood, cutting one piece and lighting the fire, and then cutting another piece and making a chair, and then taking a third piece and carving an idol, and then bowing down and worshiping what we ourselves have created. That's so crazy. I can't imagine anybody has ever done that. But we do worship idols in a much more subtle and progressive way in modern America. We do it in the factories of our own minds. We create gods. Author and speaker Dr. Os Guinness gives us the answer as to how to deal with idolatry.
The antidote to all idolatry is the true God. You have no other God but me. There is one God, no God but God, and there's no rest for anyone who has any God but God. In other words, if we live under God and have a great awareness of the character and the holiness and the sovereignty and the majesty of God, all other idols are banished, all other human things are kept in their place. The gifts of God are gifts. In other words, we've got wonderful things. God's given us the gifts of power and humanness and freedom and all these things which are magnificent, but none of them are idols if they're kept under God and He only is God.
Some people note that we could never know God unless He revealed Himself first, and He has in Jesus Christ. Do you want to know what God is like? Look at Jesus. God has made Himself known so that all humanity can know Him. He has shown Himself clearly. Now, if unbelief hides Him, that's the unbeliever's problem. Jesus once said, "Light has come into the world, but men prefer darkness because their deeds are evil." One of the stanzas of the classic hymn, "Holy, Holy, Holy," says, "Though the darkness hide Thee, though the eye of sinful man Thy glory may not see, only Thou art holy, there is none beside Thee, perfect in power, love, and purity." To worship anything less than the infinite triune God falls short. We worship God alone because He is worthy of our worship. In fact, the English word worthy is connected to the word worship. We worship the Lord because He alone is worthy of our worship. So we see that Jesus is Lord of all, including the sphere of the world, be it the natural or the spiritual world which He helped create. Remember the prologue of John's Gospel? It says this, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Through Him all things were made. Without Him nothing was made that has been made." Christ is Lord of all since He made it all. Ultimately, everything gets back to where we came from, to our true origins. The first sentence of the Bible says it all. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. When this session is over, be sure to take a few minutes to consider the questions listed in your study guide at the end of session 2. In our next installment, we'll be looking at the sphere of humanity. Well, thanks for joining us today. May God bless you as you seek to apply the Lordship of Christ to every aspect of your life.
This has been a production of Truth in Action Ministries.